Morning to have this opportunity to speak to so many of you who I know well and others who I've seen on these Saturday mornings about something which is really dear to me. And I'm just going to mention the word again, which is kalyana, and it's the theme for our centre for this year. It'll become clearer. So the morning my mum died was a very strange and haunting experience. My family, we were called into the hospital early. She'd had a heart attack the day before. And now we were told by the doctor that she was dying. And she knew she was dying. That was it. That was very strange, because we thought that she was actually unconscious, but she wasn't. And when the doctor said, you know that basically you won't live very much longer, Heather, she said yes, she actually was awake. She was still conscious on strong pain medication. But how unsettling that time was, to know suddenly that the time had come when your mother was about to die. And this period of about an hour to an hour and a half, actually, for as long as it took, was just this incredibly open, full period of when she would pass from life to death. She'd been a good mum and she'd done her best, and we were certainly not estranged. But in that sort of pregnant time, that incredibly time full of incredible possibility, I found it within myself for the first time in my life to actually say the words, "I love you, Mum." And she responded, "I love you too, son." She'd never said it. And just something, there was such depth, such sadness, such grief, and yet at the same time, this overwhelming sense of love. And it was unlike anything that I'd experienced before. And I'm going to call that whole thing kalyana. A second experience was my first time at hearing Franz Schubert's impromptu for the piano in G flat major. As the music began to flow, I just found myself slowly falling into this sort of timeless openness, where my heart was opened and my own rawness and vulnerability, I was fully present, and it was engaging in a kind of conversation, or this sort of tender, beautiful music, a sort of a dance of love with this tender, beautiful music, achingly beautiful. It was kind of like reality and I were somehow or other coming together, embracing and co-creating this moment of wonder, which I'll call again kalyana. So kalyana, I'm going to define it in generally with a lot of words: beauty, goodness, vision, freshness, aliveness, inspiration, the sacred, tender, meaning, virtue. And I'd say generally it's kind of the flavor of the spiritual life. That's how I would like to talk about this, because no one word quite will get it. But the flavor of the spiritual life, the transformative energy, because it is a kind of an energy. You know, it's more than an idea. It's more than a feeling. It's kind of this amazing transformative energy of the awakened moment or the awakened life. Now, you could say oh, well, mum dies, momentous happening, big thing in my life. Big events will always give rise to something like that. Well, yes, perhaps. Certainly in this case, it was big, but I wouldn't always say that big and momentous will necessarily arise in something quite like that. And if you look at the music experience, okay, a piece of music, so much could come out of it. So I think that the magic ingredient when thinking about kalyana, in these cases anyway, for me, was kind of like it was unknown territory. I didn't have any expectation. I didn't have any pattern that I could rely upon to sort of tell me how to respond or what to do. It was just, there was no playbook, no script. Yes, as I say, no expectation. And in fact, almost no ability to control, but certainly no controlling, no taking hold of and molding it to my own sort of slightly grubby, if you like, slightly used version of reality. It was sort of like being surprised by something, being surprised by joy in this case. So the theme of my talk is the wonder of uncertainty. So when I'm talking about kalyana, I want to sort of consider it in terms of uncertainty, because both of those experiences were full of uncertainty. So let's reflect upon our own life for a moment. Let's think about ourselves as being pretty much in control most of the time. We certainly want to be, whether the master or whether we're the boss of our own show. We shore up our wants and needs on a daily basis from the moment we wake up till the time we go to bed. The other night, Roland was evoking something like this on Men's Night when he talked about, the first thing, you might think about is the state of your bank balance, or you're thinking about your work, maybe the issues at work or power plays at work. You're thinking about your image. You're thinking about your looks. You're thinking about, your sort of, your body shape or your hairstyle or your clothes or the car you're driving or the one you want or the holiday you want to go on. The place where you live, the friends who you've got. And just, it's really tiring just to be sort of managing all of that. But we feel that we have to manage our lives in that way. But it's predictable, perhaps, and it's safe. Yes, maybe. Secure. But it can very soon become stale, disappointing, sort of sense of futility or, failure. What is my life? Where is it going? So this being in control or trying to be is not the answer. Not the answer anyway to what I'm going to call meaning, another word we can use for kalyana. And yet, if you really think about it and reflect upon it yourself right now, we've all experienced moments of kalyana. And I want you just to think of moments just briefly in your own life. I'm not going to give you more than even a few seconds, they'll arise, of beauty or fulfillment or aliveness or vision. Just reflect upon the fact, yeah, I actually do know what that is. So the Buddha saw the self as the problem. Essentially, because it's deluded, and by that, so ignorance, and it's real ignorance if we think we know what reality is, and that reality is something like that life I was describing a minute ago, where we're in control of every moment all the time. The self somehow thinks that that's what reality is all about, and trying to make that a bit better, improve it, fix it up a bit. But it's so narrow. And so self-centered, need I say, selfish, always controlling and limiting the world, limiting them to things and possessions and narrow definitions and fixed ideas and old habits. The self is about that. That's how we mostly go about our lives when our self is taking control. It can't see the bigger picture. Refusing change, even when the Buddha says that change is all there is, not only is it all there is, but it's beautiful. So our whole lives, even in their smallest, most ordinary details, I am saying, can be characterized or filled with kalyana. It doesn't have to be massive moments of utter vision, but that ordinary daily life can be so much richer, filled with kalyana. And this is the message of the Dharma. This is the message of the Dharma. When the Dharma, ultimately, the true sort of, if you want to get to the real nitty-gritty of the Dharma, talks about infinite potential or emptiness as being the, what characterizes reality. Emptiness, i.e. emptiness like, sort of the womb is empty, pregnant with possibility, pregnant with potential, the fresh, the new, the alive, every baby which is born, utterly different from every other. Never been the same ever, always different. So think about emptiness as this amazing well of possibility and aliveness. This is the message of the Dharma, and yet we don't really seem to live that daily. So the Buddha in the Diamond Sutra was speaking of his thoughts of enlightenment and how they could be explained to someone else. And he says, by a detachment from appearances, abiding in real truth. That's what it's about. So he's saying that the appearances are the stories our tired old self wants to put on the world, wants to believe about the world and our life. That's what appearances are, the old stories. But what he says is, so I tell you, thus shall you think of this fleeting world, a star at dawn, a bubble in a stream, a flashing of lightning in a summer cloud, a flickering lamp, a phantom, and a dream. Or then we have Hakuin, a really famous 18th century master, Japanese Zen master. He's speaking Dharma. He says, at this moment, is there anything lacking? Nirvana is right here before our eyes. This place is the lotus land. This body now is the Buddha. Don't try and sort of flutter that away in some, that basically means something else. He's saying that, right? Let's just take that literally for a moment. Or then we can go on to the famous 18th, 19th century poet, William Blake, in his poem, Auguries of Innocence. You'll have heard this before, but let's just think of it. To see a world in a grain of sand, and heaven in a wildflower. Hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. And again, let's just try and be a bit literal about that. Is it possible to see through the banality that we've kind of, the story we've built about the world and ourselves and life, and see so much beyond see its potential? So Ratnaguna, in one of our order members, in his book, The Art of Reflection, asks, why don't I love my life more than I do? Let's ask ourselves that question. Why don't I experience what Harkonnen is evoking, or William Blake. And I'd just like to suggest that we're holding on to the safe, the secure, even though we don't realize it. The known, we're afraid of the unknown and the uncertain. But the Dharma is reassuring us, don't be afraid. Let go of the reins. Face yourself. Be vulnerable in each moment, vulnerable, open to what the possibility. Don't kind of hold things out, or be prepared to die in each moment and be reborn in each moment. Yongye Mingyur Rinpoche, in his book, In Love with the World, I love this. He relates an anecdote of a hippie seeker who climbs to the top of a mountain to ask a wise man, can you tell me my future? And the wise man replies, sure, easy. Unless you wake up, tomorrow will feel like today. Do you want tomorrow to feel like today? This small self can't see past itself. We must learn to step aside to see the vastly more magnificent, bigger picture and allow the unexpected to arise. So let's see our practice, all of our practice as practitioners, as Buddhists, or all of our life, but our practice for those of us who are practicing. Let's see all of our practice of self-improvement and self-development as a preparation for the moment when we can trust our own, if you like, our own deepest self, our own Buddha nature within, to arise as a dear friend and to guide us into the unknown. The bigger journey is to let go and discover those depths. And all of our practice is helping us to get there. In his book, in her book, Gilead, Marilyn Robinson, it's one of my favorite books, and it's been coming up quite a bit lately here and there for me. So it's wonderful to be able to evoke this book, but it's got a protagonist who's quite an old man. He's a congregational minister in the Midwest of the United States. He's got a very young son. He's got a young wife, and they've managed to have a young son. The boy's just 7 years old. And the minister knows he has a terminal heart condition, and he's not going to be able to do what he'd like to do as a father and really talk to his son about the really important things. So he writes these reflections down, and that's what the book is. And he says, John Ames, this pastor, he says, I know more than I know and must learn from myself. And I think he's getting at this idea of this deeper self, this deepest self, this sense of intuition and vision. But our Buddhist practice of ethics and wisdom and meditation are the ways we can work in this direction. But let's keep this vision of what's possible. He says, I have wandered to the limits of my understanding any number of times, and I've scared myself too a good many times, leaving all landmarks behind me, or so it seemed. And it has been among the true pleasures of my life, night and light, silence and difficulty. It seemed to me always rigorous and good. And I want to say good, kalyana. Kalyana. The Dharma is not ultimately about making this narrow self a better and better version of itself. it is about leaving all landmarks behind, as John Ames says, and resting, rejoicing, trusting in the rawness, the strangeness, the vulnerability of the unknown. Allowing kalyana, beauty, which is fresh, pristine, alive, to arise out of the emptiness. And then to engage with it tenderly in a dance of infinite possibility. Thank you.
Oh, magnificent. Thank you so much, Nandavani.
Thank you, Nandavani.
Wow.
Did you have any pointers or questions to guide out?
I do have. They're pretty straightforward, and I hope that you enjoy sharing with each other by discussing. Let's discuss our own moment. I'm saying one, it could be moments, but let's discuss with each other, share with each other, as honestly as we can, our own moment of kalyana. And let's kind of ask each other, how might we experience more kalyana in our life?
Great. Thank you.